always keeping my fingers crossed that the stream works, and it looks like the stream is working. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you're joining us from. My name is Brenda Muller. I'm your host for this show. I like to call it Enthusiastically Self-Employed, and I bring on a variety of different experts and friends and connections who are themselves self-employed and offering advice to you. And I want to welcome you. If you're joining us, we'd love it if you could drop a comment below. That lets us know that the live stream is working, so we know people are watching here. And it also lets us know who's watching. So thank you so much for taking the opportunity to drop a comment and just say hello where you're watching from. Let us know if you're team live or team replay if you could. And while we're doing that, I want to introduce my very special guest. I've got a point over here. Sybil Stewart. Hey, Sybil, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Brenda. Thank you so much. It's officially afternoon here, so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, the morning's flying by. I love my live days because it's like it kind of kicks it off and makes it a lot of fun. When you work from home, it gets a little lonely, but this is our time to have a party in the middle of the day, if you will. So Sybil and I met each other officially, I guess, first through Innovation Women. But when we were talking in the pre-show, Sybil's like, how do you know Cynthia Barnes? And I'm like, you know Cynthia Barnes? I know Cynthia Barnes. Like, I'm convinced all the really great, cool people are all interconnected with each other. In a second, I'll tag Cynthia Barnes in the comments. Maybe she's watching and joining us here today. But I know you from Innovation Women. I popped onto your webinar about a week or so back as well. But why don't you take a few minutes, if you could, Sybil, and tell us a bit about what do you do, who do you help, and what do you help them with?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Cynthia Barnes, great people. There's no such thing as a chance interaction. Like I said, we ran into each other at the Dillards, and I'm never in Dillards. I'm never at the mall, and there it was. So chance collision, and so excited to be here today. But I help creative women build profitable brands they love. So if you are a creative, if you are an artist, a dancer, a musician, I've worked with authors and speakers who are trying to figure out how to turn that one-to-one interaction into something that's scalable and sustainable. So if you are that struggling artist listening out there, I want to know you are not alone. I was a struggling artist as well, a gigging musician for years. So I know the toll that it takes to want to always present your best art. So if I can help you monetize that, that's what I'm here to do.
That's wonderful. And she's got such a great introduction, doesn't she? Did you notice that? It's like so succinct and such a great way of explaining the audience that she serves and how she helps them. And we are going to be talking today. I'm going to pull our topic up on screen. Give me just a moment. When you are doing these on your own, you're doing the piloting, the co-piloting, you're emceeing, and you're interviewing on stage all at once. It's a lot of fun. But today we're going to be talking about creating a living brand and how that is core to your business success. So I'll continue to invite our audience. Please drop your comments in. Let us know if you can hear and see us. We would love it. I did notice, Sybil, I do a lot of these LinkedIn Live events, and today's the first time I notice I have my profile open up in another window. And usually the LinkedIn Live will fill out the banner. You know, I'm talking about like the header image at the top of your profile. And today it didn't, at least on my view. So if you're watching in the audience and it's loading on your banner from your view of my profile, let me know. Maybe that's just a glitch that I'm experiencing. But I'm wondering if, and sometimes we don't know, is it a LinkedIn limitation? Is LinkedIn saying, nope, we're not doing that anymore? Or is StreamYard not pushing it in correctly? I see the live stream is working on my activity feed. So those of you that registered for the event are finding it from here, but I'm just kind of curious about that. So we're going to jump right into the discussion here. And I guess I'll just kick it off by just saying, you know, we're here talking about creating a living brand and how that's core to business success. So what advice do you have for us, Sybil?
That the modern view of brands is not the same thing that we think it is, right? So anytime I start to work with someone, they'll say, oh, I already have a logo, I already have a website. And I'm like, great, let's talk about your brand now. And if we think about what a brand is, what a personal brand is, it's not a caricature. So often women think they've got to pretzel themselves or turn themselves into something that they aren't, and that's not sustainable. So your living brand really is and should be an extension of you. It is the persona that goes ahead of you and the memory that people have after they interact with you. And the better we are at shaping that message, the more our brand comes to life. I think about brands that have stood the test of time, and we can remember them either from a childhood memory or a moment or that favorite song that, used to play back in the day. Our children are going to have a different memory, but it's going to come from us. So, like, what are those brands? When you think about Cher still performing in her 70s, right? Like, we've all got a Cher story. She has a living brand. When you think about brands that have figured out how to evolve over time, like The Rock, who is now a movie sensation, he decided to own what it meant to have a personal brand and help it evolve. So anytime you can help your brand do that, that is a living brand. So it's beyond everything we think it is. And it shifts more towards how people are viewing us and what we want to be remembered for.
So does it change over time, Sybil? Like when you first start your business, do you have to figure out what your brand is, what your living brand is, and you stick to it? Or can you kind of change and grow and evolve? What do you think?
So I believe in basing all of your brand on core values. Your core
Mhm.
values should not change. Like, might they be edited and tweaked as you get more information? Absolutely. But when you think about the core 3 or 4 things that you are, not only to yourself, but to the world, like, those are pretty set in stone, either from genetics, heredity, or your view of the world. So not confusing what people see with who you are is really key to this process. I tell all of my creatives, your brand messaging is probably going to evolve 3 or 4 times, especially as you get better at talking about what you do. But in those instances that people say, oh, why do I remember you? It's because you were a very specific thing. One of the things that I joke about all the time is like, liars have brands too, right? Like, they are
Yeah.
consistently doing a thing that they are now known for. And so if you have an awareness of what you're known for, the image is just an extension of that. That's the physical appearance, but the memories are really what's coming along.
Yeah, and without naming names or talking about any big liars that we all may be aware of, my advice is don't give the liars any oxygen at all. You know,
Yeah.
when you're and sometimes we hear stories on the radio about these people that are spreading lies, and what I do is I change the channel and I put on some Taylor Swift and I rock it out or some Beyonce or something. I'm jamming in the car on it. But yeah, I think the point there is that there's a living brand, and living brands can be positive things. They can be maybe sometimes negative if people wish to live that out as a liar. But I think that what I heard you say is they're all tied to our core values, and there's are the core values something that change over time, or is that like really just kind of consistent throughout?
I would say your core values are consistent. The challenge with core value conversations, though, is most of us haven't sat to
Mhm.
know what they are. We have what we think they are,
Yeah.
but more often than not, when I'm coaching, I'm like, that's not your core value. It's probably this thing over here. But that's why it's so important for us to have a power of words and a knowing of vocabulary that matches that thing that we want to be known for. I think that's
Mhm.
probably the biggest gap between like what I think I value versus my value system and how I communicate it.
Mhm. So talk to me about, the topic we're here today talking about is creating a living brand is core to business success. So what's the link between having a clear living brand that's tied to those values and your business success? Help to draw the line between those two for us.
Oh my goodness. Like, how many of you are tired of firing the wrong clients? Well, you're firing the
Mhm.
wrong clients because of what people know you as. And the more specific your brand gets, it starts living and breathing through your social media content, through your
Mhm.
interactions with clients, through how you serve, through how you show up in places and spaces. And so my challenge to everyone, including everyone listening today, is think about all of those clients you've had to fire over the years, however long you've been in business. There's a theme there, and it is incongruent with the brand you're creating. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why was I attracting that? And how can I stop attracting that and start creating with intention the things that I do want to be known for?
Mhm.
So I would say that's the thing, right? If I no longer want to be known for being in HR, I can't let people talk about Sybil HR
Right.
because Sybil 2024 does brand strategy. And so you've got to have systems in place that not only stops the messaging, but also educates people on the words that they need to be remembering and associating with you.
Hmm.
So it's really about owning all of it and not taking any of those parts for granted. Like
Yeah.
not assuming that people are going to say the things about you just because they know you.
That's a good point. And I think what I see for some people, I'm going to say who are entrepreneurs, who are self-employed, in the beginning, I think they hesitate. They don't have that confidence behind what they do, or they practice their introduction and they ramble and they go on, or they're like, does that make sense? It's not to say I wouldn't do this, but I could do this. And what I heard you do in your introduction, you embraced it, you said it with confidence, there was clarity in that. So is that something that's coachable? We can move away from the waffling description to the confident description. And do you have any tips for us on making there?
Yeah, it's coachable and cheap plug, not so cheap plug, but I wrote a book about it because I found that clarity is the number one thing stopping a lot of entrepreneurs from building and growing and scaling their business. But every business book I read didn't make sense. So like, well, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you get clear? It's like start with why. I'm like, how do I know my why? And so I wrote a book. It's releasing on Friday called Reset the Foundation.
Okay.
And it really challenges readers to reset and rethink everything you think you know to be true about you. And when you go to that place, you'll realize the messaging that you want to share is already in you. And I talk about some of the challenges, which is what you're talking about, because confidence is scary. Clarity is scary. The first time that I said, okay, I am no longer serving this group of people, also meant facing some of those other fears that come with entrepreneurship. Is somebody going to buy this new thing I'm selling? Is somebody going to speak on my behalf or go ahead of me and say, yes, Sybil is great at doing these things? And so it's not just about the context that we're talking about ourselves. Sometimes we just got to compile some really good fodder and get some testimonials and get people who are willing to affirm everything we already know to be true about ourselves.
Awesome. And I did not know about your book. And somebody might say, well, counsel is leading the witness. She asked that question because she knew it. No, I honestly didn't. And Sybil and I just really have a good rapport. We've talked through Innovation Women. We've been on each other's shows and stuff. And I know she's got great clarity in her introduction. I was really just like asking the question. And even in the pre-show, when I book my guests, I don't know that, did you pick this date to align with the launch of your book, or was it just coincidental?
Okay. Nothing happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I was going to launch my book September 15th. And then my very delightful coach, Cynthia, said, why are you waiting? Mm-hmm. You need to do this immediately. And by immediately, she meant Friday.
Because it was ready to go. And she's like, why are you waiting? Right.
It was ready to go. She was like, go get your test readers, go do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I could feel all of the, and I was like, okay, this is like, it's happening. So yeah.
It was just coincidental. And I put on the LinkedIn, I put a comment on LinkedIn with the link to your post from Monday. Let's see if I can put this. I think I can put this in a banner up on screen as well. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see the post on here. But this is a post she did earlier in the week where she talks about it. So I have to add, if there's somebody who's interested, is there a pre-sale list, or do we just need to watch your LinkedIn post? Or how do we, if we want to buy the book and support you, where do we find that?
Yeah, so I'm doing a Black Friday release this Friday, and then books will officially go on sale on Saturday. So all of that will be on my LinkedIn, all over my social media. Yep.
Okay, good. And I always like to support fellow entrepreneurs, especially fellow authors. I'm an author myself, and I know the process of launching a book. It's so much like having a baby. For those of you who are moms out there will appreciate, it does take a good 9 months to birth a book, and it can be a very painful process. It's a very exciting process as well. So whenever I hear of fellow authors, I always like to give them some spotlight and some love for their book. So I'm very excited for you, Sibylla. Be sure to check that book out as well. And for those that might be joining us a few minutes late, we are talking today about creating a living brand and how it's core to business success. And is this a concept that's always been a part of your business, Sybil? Or you alluded earlier to Sybil HR. So have you shifted yourself in your business since you started?
Oh my goodness. So Sybil HR was corporate Sybil. Corporate
Hmm.
Sybil spent almost 13 years in HR.
Hmm.
And that point of reckoning when I was no longer her was it was probably the lowest point.
Hmm.
Not because I was like sad or any of the things that people think. And then I heard a sermon and they said it's called languish, where you don't
Hmm.
know, like you have an indifference. And that's where I was. I was like, why don't I care about this career that time, money, energy, all the things? Why don't I care about it anymore? And it's because it was no longer me.
Yeah.
And so the transition out of corporate, I was like, well, who am I? And if
Hmm.
you are used to titles anchoring you and you no longer have that title, that
Hmm.
is like it'll knock you back in your seat a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it took me probably 18 months to figure out what it was I was actually selling.
Hmm.
And it was always the thing I was selling, even in HR. I just didn't have a name for it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So when I think about crisis communications, reputation management, helping women get ready to negotiate for salaries, helping women get ready for interview prep, all of that the
Hmm.
whole time was exactly what I'm doing now. I just have a name for it. So I had to study myself and study my new industry so that they both could make sense.
That's amazing. And I think so many entrepreneurs have gone through a similar process. I love the word, was it languish that you used?
Language.
I always I would talk about leaving my corporate career. You have to grieve it a little bit, and I think it's the same process you went through. You come to a point where you accept that you're no longer going to be on that path that you thought you were going to be on. And then you have to release it from your own identity, which can be a very, sometimes painful process. And then you have to release your life that used to be a corporate life and now embrace it. And once you're on the other side of things, I have to say, Sybil, the water's fine, but it's like getting here, it can be a little bit tricky, right?
It can be tricky, especially when it's still countercultural. Like I have such an
Mhm.
appreciation for these younger generations who are bulking, business
Mhm.
as usual and saying, no, this can be a career. I wish 20 years ago I had had that level of introspection and energy to carve my own path, because this is not my first business. This is actually my third business, but this is the one I want to be in. So
Yeah.
say all that to
But it feels
say
good once you got here. It's just a bumpy ride, and it's not like one day Sybil and I both woke up and said, "We're gonna leave corporate," and the next day you're an overnight success. It's not necessarily that, and, there's many statistics on how many, businesses are still in business 5 years after. Now, how long have you been self-employed, Sybil?
yeah, this time around.
Yeah, well, in total, how many time I guess, did you go back to corporate in
I did.
between being self-employed? Okay, oh, that's
I
good.
did. I did.
Yeah.
So in total, I have been self-employed. Now we're aging me, Brenda. In total, I've been self-employed for 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're very similar to me. And I've been in total coming up on, I had to think about this for a second. I technically left corporate 7 years ago, and I didn't really start full time with my business until 2018. So a little over 6 years, but coming up on seven. And it's interesting that you say this time around, and, entrepreneurship, being self employed is not for everyone. You do have to be enthusiastically self-employed, because guess what? You don't have a boss and you don't have a team who's driving you. It's you. You have to be driving your business all the time. But you are always, unless you have a steady stream of income, retainer clients, or, something else that's helping to support your income, you're always chasing after the next piece of business, the next client. And it can be tedious and sometimes fatiguing at times. And I'll admit, every once in a while, I'll be like, well, maybe I just do a part-time something. Like, for example, it's back to school season, and our local school districts sometimes will pay for substitute teachers for the day. And I have a master's degree, so I would qualify. I'm like, maybe I'll just do that like a couple times during the semester, just get back into the swing of routine of things and have some supplemental pay coming in. But then there's other people like you who've said, and I've known others as well, they say, I want to get back into the corporate just so I have that reliable paycheck for a while. And then sometimes they come back in and sometimes they stay out, they stay on the corporate side of things. But I think that probably ties back to those core values as well. Would you agree?
I agree. And I think the other thing that I will say is being careful of distractions and being careful
Mm-hmm.
of who you are sharing your dreams and vision with. When I realized that this is the business, I didn't tell anyone about it because I did not
Mm-hmm.
want small thinking to ruin the big vision. And
Yeah.
I held on to this business until I was confident that I could take all of the hits that
Yeah.
come with being an entrepreneur. And so there's a skin building that
Yeah,
has to
that's true.
come
A
with
thickening, right?
right? Like you've got to put on your whole armor when you tell someone you are not going back to corporate, and you say it with the authority that you've got. And so
Yeah.
even on those bad days, I remember last year, to your point, I went back and taught school because, right, like I was a school teacher before I got into corporate. And because
Oh.
I didn't know what else to do with myself, I was like, well, I guess I'll go teach school while I'm running my business. So I taught school for a
Mhm.
year, and I was like, okay, no, you're really done. Like there was a reason you
Right.
left corporate. Um, and no, I'm not signing up to be a substitute teacher because I thought about that as well. Um,
Mhm.
because there are so many principals and educators in my church, and they'll send
Mhm.
around the like, we need help roster, and I pass it by every Sunday. I'm like, no,
You just like slip it on. Not
here
for
you
me.
go.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point though, both in who you share your story with what you're going to do with your business. I'm not going back to corporate, I'm doing the self-employed. But I think it's also what I heard you say, it's the way that you say it with conviction and with happiness and with joy. I don't think you can waffle. I don't think you can say to people, yeah, I'm thinking about leaving corporate and just staying on my own, because they're going to hear that. They're going to hear that little glimpse of doubt, and they're going to jump on that. Well, are you sure? What about your corporate paycheck? Well, I can't believe you're not going to be CMO, Brenda. You said that's what you were going to do. You just gave up on that dream, and and that will tear you apart, as opposed to say, I am so excited because I don't have to go back to corporate. I've chosen this path. Things are successful, and I have my own business. I mean, I think there's something to be said with that. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, all of what you said, but then I think every time someone sends me, some well-intentioned human
Mhm.
sends me a VP of HR job description, I'm like, what would you like for me to do with this?
Yeah,
Who
right?
shall
Is
I
this
forward this to?
Yeah. Is this for me sharing with my network? If so, if you post it, I'll comment on it to help spread the word. So it's good that you're kind of setting that boundary and sometimes redirecting people, it sounds
You've
like.
got to. You've got to
Mhm.
redirect people, and you've got to remember that there's a difference between disruption and distraction. So, right, you
Mhm.
like I knew my life as I knew it would be disrupted when
Mhm.
I left corporate, but it was my job to not let things distract me, like
Mhm.
people sending me job descriptions, like people, right? My
Mhm.
well-intentioned humans around me. So if you understand that entrepreneurship has to have some disruptive qualities about it, you approach it
Mhm.
with a childlike innocence to say,
Mm.
"Oh, right, I was supposed to fall. I never learned this skill. This is me getting up. Right. I look at my nieces, they're not babies anymore, they're toddlerish age. And I remember my niece who was just like aggressively trying to walk. She didn't remember how many times she fell off, you
Mm-mm.
know, and bumped her head or whatever, right? She didn't remember that. All she remembers is I am modeling the behavior that I want
Mhm.
to do. And that was like, we can learn so much from children. I could go on all day, but like that was my light
Mhm.
bulb moment. I need to be like my niece. I need
Yeah.
to model behaviors of the people that I see doing the things and being the people that I want to be.
Hmm. Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, I think I'm modeling children, modeling their behavior. And one thing children do is they ask questions a lot. They ask a lot of questions, which is a nice segue to, hey, I want to bring our audience into the conversation. I want you are all watching right now. We have a dozen or so people watching on LinkedIn. We've got another group that's watching on Instagram. You might be watching us on YouTube. If you are, I want to encourage you. Let's join the conversation. And do you have any questions you'd like to ask Sybil? Maybe it's about her business journey. Maybe it's about some of the core values she talked about earlier, the concept of living brand, or other elements of her business success story. But don't be shy. We love hearing from our audience, and we'd love to bring your questions on screen. Now, I'm buying a little bit of time. Did you notice that, Sybil? I'm buying a little bit of time in giving this introduction because I know that there's a bit of a delay from the time that I say, drop your question below in comments to the time that people hear me saying that. It's about 30 seconds. And then it might take them another 30 seconds to think of a question or a comment that they'd like to ask and then to type it in. Um, so I'm nudging them along through the process. And I do want to pull up some comments that we've received so far from folks that are watching. I'm going to give a shout out to Michelle B. Griffin. Do you know Michelle as well,
I
Sybil?
think we are in network. I was like, she looks familiar. Hi,
Yeah. I
Michelle.
think she may be a part of Innovation Women as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think she may have been on some of the Friday calls, but she's really into the whole concept of personal branding for women, and she's got a Standout Women series that she does on a podcast and with a LinkedIn Live series as well. If you don't know each other, I highly recommend the two of you connect because I
Yeah.
think there should be some nice synergies from that point on there. And David, you're like our super fan today. Thank you so much. He was the first one to jump into comments, and he's had some really thoughtful comments as we've gone throughout the conversation today. At first, accept everything that pays. And I want to bring us back to this point, Sybil, because earlier you talked about, sometimes you have those clients you have to fire because they're not aligning with your values. But early on in your business, and I think to David's point, you do have to take a lot on because you want to have some income stability. Do you recall that for your business, Sybil? And when was it that you started to make the decision to say no to some clients so that you could say yes to the others?
Yeah, no, I remember accepting any and all of the things and what that led to. And I think there's such a balance between taking the things so you can pay your bills, but also being very wary that every time you take something that's not in alignment with your business, the longer it's going to take for you to start getting the people who are there, who are waiting for your services, who will want to compensate you in the way that you deserve to be compensated. And
Mhm.
it was a battle because I was like, oh my gosh, this client is, they pay really well. Okay, no, turn your head, rip the band-aid off, go find some new clients once you feel
Mhm.
good about that new product that you're selling. But I think it really goes back to having a confidence in perfecting the three parts that really drive business, which is your branding, your marketing, and your sales, right?
Mhm.
Like you can sell anything as long as branded and market well. You can market the thing as long as it's got a good brand, you're ready to sell it. Right.
Mhm.
So having those three things, and they usually don't grow at all the same times when you're first starting in business. They're usually
Right.
skills most people who don't have. Um,
Mhm.
After leaving corporate, like I was really fortunate that I was in HR because what's my number one job? To sell the organization. Okay, you
Right.
got it.
Yeah, right? It's all interlinked with personal branding, really.
Right.
Mhm.
So thinking about that confidence in those areas is what will help you get where you want to go faster. But yeah, I agree, David. Some days I was like, yep, I'm going to take this because they are paying.
You need the money. I hear you. And you have those days, and as business grows and evolves, and as your business becomes more successful, it's becomes easier to say no to the wrong fit and right to the yes fit. I want to give a shout out also to our friend Jack Gempel. Jack, it's such a pleasure to see you in the audience. It has been a little while since we've seen each other, and Jack is sharing that we all have personal brands. What your brand is depends on whether you develop it or people will create it for you. And part of the reason I'm reading this out loud, Sybil, is twofold. One is there might be vision impaired individuals that are listening to the show today. Two is this will be broadcast later on the podcast and people won't be able to see who said it and what they said. So I'm reading it up on what's on screen right now. Do you have any thoughts on Jack's comments there?
I totally agree with Jack. Like either you're creating it or somebody's going to create their own narrative. So you need to be very decisive in what you want people to say about you and what you want to be known for and remembered for. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm gonna read a comment that's on Instagram. Now I'm using StreamYard. So StreamYard pulls in comments from LinkedIn, it pulls them in from YouTube. Unfortunately, it doesn't pull them in from Instagram. So I've got my Instagram open up in another window. And I see Billy Thompson is watching us. Billy's in Metro Detroit as well. And he says they don't know failure as an option. I'm guessing that he's talking about successful entrepreneurs, Sybil. So I'm going to insert that into what Billy is sharing and ask, what are your thoughts there? They don't know failure is an option.
Failure is not an option. There's no such thing as try. Like if you wake up every day with those words together, yes, one of my favorite things that I tell people, I said, running your business should either be simple or easy. Some days it will be simple, other days it will be easy. Anything outside of that, you're probably not focusing on the right things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Simple or easy. Some days, yeah, I completely agree. It can feel easy for your business, and other times it's simple, and might go back and forth a little bit in that process. I see Debbie is watching us on YouTube, and I'm pulling one of our YouTube viewers in here as well, and she says, "Wonderful subject with many great points made. Thank you, ladies," from Debbie Weems. I'm not sure if you know Debbie. I think she might be in Florida, if I'm not mistaken. But she also specializes in LinkedIn coaches. And I'm curious, for me, Sybil, I surround myself with other people who do similar work. I like to refer to it as the co-opetition. I heard that word from Terry Bean. I'll give him a shout out. Or the rising tide lifts all boats. But what are your philosophies there on surrounding yourself with people who maybe do similar work to you? And how do you feel it can help your business?
Yeah. Every single personal brand strategist I've interacted with, none of them either serve the population I serve or do the work that I do in the way that I do it. And so I have an appreciation for how they approach the craft versus how I approach the craft. And if we start looking at it from that way, there are going to be clients that are not a good fit for me. I get to be a good referral partner for them because everyone knows I don't work with men. Here you go. This lovely lady, I can't remember her name, is on LinkedIn. She works with men. Go talk to her. And then she'll send me clients who are in the creative space. So when we look at it as an opportunity to serve others, people will want to help you grow your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good point. And having that referral system set up because you can help each other. Here's a comment from Haney. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. I'm going to try my best guess at pronouncing first name here. But Haney says, HR is a key pillar of branding, shaping the employer brand and internal image among management and employees. They effectively market new policies, decisions, and drive change within the organization. So I believe your previous experiences sure helped you a lot, Sybil. Any comments on that?
Haney must work in HR. Only HR people know that HR does all of this.
Right. Good HR people, because what I've seen in my corporate career, Sybil, is there's the good HR people who are progressive, forward thinking, who understand this whole brand internal image and driving the organization forward. And then there are the more restrictive HR people who are policies and procedures, and we don't deviate from any of these things. And they cause the organization to crumble from within. Really, right?
But pretty much. And I'm so glad I was the first one, at least, I thought I was. But all of the policies are shaped by the corporate culture, and corporate culture is shaped by whoever started the business. So if you look at that person's core values, you will see everything you are branding and messaging has to do with how they started the business in the first place. So every time someone was like, "Were you in marketing?" And I was like, "Well, I marketed the business." it was my job to protect the reputation of the brand at quote unquote at all costs. Going
Hmm.
on Glassdoor, making sure our LinkedIn messaging was in alignment with our policies and procedures, making sure that everyone we hired aligned with the brand image that we wanted. So it's exactly what Hanny said. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. And I'm going to give you one final question here. And this is David. And David's talking about failure being part of the process. And now, if you watch my show, you know I frequently talk about I don't make mistakes. I have learning experiences. Sometimes I have technical learning experiences. Sometimes I have learning experiences that are part of my business. If I don't have a to do list at the beginning of the day, I will get shiny objects squirrel syndrome where I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Oh, a LinkedIn message, a prompt. And I need to keep focus on that. So I definitely would agree with that, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on is failure part of the process?
I call those memoir moments. You know, it's like when you're writing your book 50 years from now
Mhm.
and you can look back and laugh on it. That's what those moments are. I'm like, this is not funny right now, but wait till I retell this story the way I feel like telling it later. They're my memoir
Mhm.
moments. And I cannot say I've had a failure in business. I think the moment my business fails is the moment I decide I'm no longer in business, because then that's a failure. But outside of that, being guided, redirected, coached, pulled, that's not failure. That's called clarity.
Mhm.
And we often confuse clarity with failure because we've been historically taught that to be consequence avoidant, but
Mhm.
have to take consequences on when you're an entrepreneur. We are taught to create excuses instead of create solutions. So yeah, I don't believe in failure.
Yeah, I like it. And I think that's something if you are following a lot of people who are self-employed, you'll see this whole concept of being resilient. And we need to be motivating ourselves. We're always self-motivating ourselves. It doesn't mean we always get it right. It doesn't mean that we don't have those down days. We talked about that. But I think you find over time that I think one of your core values is probably, something related to self-motivating yourself. Would you agree with that, Sybil?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I tell myself, I said, extend yourself the grace that you give other people. Like
Mhm.
whatever happens, you give yourself that same level of grace.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Now, David did say earlier, I'm going to pull this back up on screen. He asked, "Do you have a copy of your book that you could hold up? Do you have a copy of your book handy?"
Oh my gosh, it's an ebook, David. But you know what? If enough people
Okay.
buy it, I will certainly turn it into a physical copy.
Yeah.
But it is called Reset the
Hmm.
Foundation: How to Fix the Bones of Your Business. That is the name of the book. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, I have the images of it on there.
All right. Wonderful. And speaking of LinkedIn, let me pull up your LinkedIn profile and I'm going to share it up on screen. As I'm doing that, I want to just ask you, Sybil, are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn? And if so, do you have any instructions or anything that we should follow to make sure that you're accepting that invitation?
Yeah, definitely send me an invite and I will gladly connect. Let's do coffee. Always excited to connect with everyone. Absolutely.
Wonderful. And if people are interested in learning more about you, is this the right web address, thesagestewart.com/1x brands? Am I showing the right
That
one?
is it. That is
Okay.
it.
And I'm going to show this up on screen right now. I'm going to go to the website, thesagestewart.com/1x brands. I'm going to spell that out /ONE, the letter X brands. As I'm on the site, do you want to point out anything in particular, any resources or freebies or things like that that people might want to check out?
Yeah, if you check out that resources tab, I've got a lot of my tools and templates there. And it's really just about helping people get a little closer to brand clarity. So I've got the clarity formula, I've got brand positioning, how you move through the market. I've got a brag book template for those of us who have been leery or scary of asking for testimonials. Build yourself a brag book. I recommend 25. I've also got a couple of lower cost paid resources there as well for people
Mhm.
who are interested. The 14-day content creation challenge, if you're challenged with getting your message clear, that one is really helpful.
Mhm.
And it's like, if you can't create content you care about for 14 days, of course you're going to hate creating content indefinitely. Like, this is a
Yeah.
long game.
Yeah. Definitely. So many great resources there, Sybil. So I'll let folks follow your links, and I will put these in the show notes for those that might be watching the podcast later. And I did put that link for the resources in the LinkedIn as well, if people are interested in learning about that. So today we were talking about how your living brand is core to your business success. We were joined today by Sybil Stewart. Sybil, do you have any final comments before we wrap up our conversation today?
Yeah, if you can figure out how to live your brand, then you will create a living brand. If you are unhappy, dissatisfied, or feeling in conflict with the things you are doing, it is okay to stop doing it, to
Mhm.
start pivoting and go do something else. It is okay. Um, I know you probably know social media better than me, but like, what was the last report that said something like only 7% of your social media posts are seen anyway?
Mhm.
No one cares that much. Go do something different.
Right? And I find that so many people are hesitant, like, posting on LinkedIn because, like, "Oh my gosh, everyone's gonna see it." No, and the reality is depending on, point in time of the year, it might be anywhere from 2 to 10% of your network, maybe more, but there's a good likelihood they're not gonna see it at all. If you're posting content that's relevant, it can help to increase those chances, but I love that point, don't be so worried about it, and I love the fact that you do a 14-day content creation challenge because I think some people really get stuck at even starting. Like, what do I post the first day? And then what do I post next? So I think that can be a really great thing. Speaking of posting, I want to ask our audience, hey, if you're watching this on LinkedIn and you did enjoy the conversation, as soon as this video is done playing, you're going to see a little share icon. It looks like a paper airplane at the bottom. Go ahead and share this along. You can actually do a repost with your thoughts or share it along on your LinkedIn network. Tag Sybil and I in your post when you do so. Tap the little @ Sybil Stewart at Brenda Meller. That way we'll get notified and we'll add a comment on there. And one technique I like to do when we do this, Sybil, is like tell people something that you learned by watching the video. Or maybe say, if you are an entrepreneur, you should watch this video because, like, give people a little preview of what they can expect. And I think this is a really powerful technique that can help you to reach people without struggling too much with the content. With that said, Sybil, this was such a delight seeing you. I get to see you just about every Friday when we're on our Innovation Women Speaker Friend Fridays calls, but I really did enjoy the conversation today. And I love how you gave us permission to grow and evolve our brand. And I love how you gave that reminder about your core values and how that's a part of your living brand. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me today. This has been fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I want to get us signed off here, and I'll just remind everyone to make sure to connect with Sybil on LinkedIn and check out her website to learn more. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. And I just realized right now I had a learning experience, Sybil. Remember in the pre-show, I was like building my intro videos, my outro videos. I just realized I had not yet uploaded my outro video. So right now I'm buying some time, my friends. And you can do this successfully. You can buy time if you have forgotten to upload your outro video at the end. All you need to do is you need to keep talking and you need to keep people engaged while the video upload happens. Now, the challenging part is, any of you who know this, the larger the file, the longer it takes. If you've watched that movie, what is it called? Office Space, the movie. Remember when he's trying to shut down his computer on Friday night and the boss is walking over and he's like, hurry, hurry. That's what's happening right now. I'm trying to get the upload before I lose too much of our audience, but it looks like the upload is processing. It's such a large file, but I like to do an intro video because it helps to smooth the process out at the beginning. And I like to do the outro video as well because it's a nice bookend. With that said, have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you for your patience, and we'll see you all on LinkedIn. Take care.